Hello friends, welcome to today's daily devotion. I'm reading to you from the Gospel of Luke, the 22nd chapter, starting in verse 39 and reading through verse 65. Hear now these words. Jesus came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he reached the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not come into the time of trial." Then he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and gave him strength. In his anguish he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling on the ground. And when he got up from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping because of grief. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray that you may not come into the time of trial." While he was still speaking, suddenly a crowd came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, "Judas, is it with a kiss that you are betraying the Son of Man?" When those who were around him saw what was coming, they asked, "Lord, should we strike with a sword?" Then one of them struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple police, and the elders who had come for him, "Have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a bandit? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness." Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. But Peter was following at a distance. When they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat together, Peter sat among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him in the firelight, stared at him and said, "This man also was with him." But Peter denied it, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." And a little later, someone else, on seeing him, said, "You are also one of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." And then about an hour later, still another kept insisting, "Surely this man was with him, for he is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are talking about." At that moment, while Peter was still speaking, the cock crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and wept bitterly. Now the men who were holding Jesus began to mock him and beat him. They also blindfolded him and kept asking him, "Prophesy, who is it that struck you?" And they kept heaping many other insults on him. Here we are entering into what is known as the Passion of the Christ, the time of Jesus' arrest and suffering. We're still in Thursday night. We have experienced the Lord's Supper just a few verses earlier. And now Jesus calls them out to go pray in the garden. And Jesus prays, "Lord, let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, may your will be done and not mine." As we think about what Jesus goes through on this Thursday night and into Friday, as we experience what Jesus went through, we can only do it vicariously. We can put ourselves back into that moment, but it is not a moment that we actually experience on our own. It's only by empathy that we can understand. And yet, I believe that is enough. We can put ourselves into Peter's place and experience him as he is afraid and denies Jesus, even though Jesus is standing just a few yards away from him. And when Jesus looks back and his eyes meets Peter's eyes, I can feel that terror, that disappointment, that hurt, that guilt. What are you feeling as you hear these words? Are they touching into the depths of your soul, and you are like me crying out, "Alas, and did my Savior bleed?" My friends, Jesus did this for you and for me. Let us feel and remember. And I'll see you tomorrow for another daily devotion.